the rise of the warrior sultan did not end with victory over the invading coalition. In many ways, that moment marked the beginning of a new chapter defined not by threats at the gates, but by deeper challenges from within. After the siege, the capital breathed again, though the echoes of fear lingered in its streets. Families returned to their homes. Merchants reopened their stalls. Soldiers rested after months of exhausting vigilance. Yet beneath this surface, calm, the Sultan sensed a more subtle danger growing. Great victories often create great expectations. The people now saw him not only as a ruler, but as a symbol, someone who could guide them through any obstacle. Allies portrayed him as a guardian of stability. Enemies whispered that he was becoming too powerful. And among the nobles within the palace, some viewed his rising reputation with quiet resentment. The Sultan understood that wars fought with swords were easier than wars fought with ambition. And so, he prepared for the conflict he knew was coming. Rumors began spreading through the court, claims that the treasury had been mismanaged, accusations that key officials were withholding information, hints that certain commanders were forming alliances without approval. Many dismissed these as the usual noise of palace politics. But the Sultan paid attention. He had learned long ago that whispers often reveal more truth than speeches shouted in public squares to uncover the reality. He appointed a trusted circle of investigators, individuals chosen not for loyalty, but for integrity. They traveled across the kingdom, visiting districts, examining records, and speaking directly with the people. What they discovered confirmed the Sultan's suspicion. Corruption had taken root long before he ascended the throne. Local leaders had built networks of influence. Wealthy merchants manipulated tax routes. Some commanders exaggerated troop numbers to secure extra pay. These were not enemies attacking from outside. They were weaknesses rotting the foundation from within. The Sultan acted carefully. Removing corrupt officials too quickly could spark rebellion. Moving too slowly would deepen the damage. He began by restructuring provincial administrations. Every region was assigned an independent auditor. Military units were reorganized, and new commanders were trained to prioritize discipline over personal gain. He created a special council for public grievances, allowing farmers, merchants, and craftsmen to report corruption directly to the capital. For the first time in generations, common citizens felt that their voices mattered. But reforms always create resistance. A faction of powerful nobles felt threatened. They controlled mines, ports, and trade caravans. They believed their wealth gave them the right to influence every decision. Privately, they began meeting in lavish halls, discussing ways to weaken the Sultan's authority. They blamed him for reducing their privileges. They accused him of empowering common people. And eventually, they crossed a line that forced the Sultan to act. One night, a messenger intercepted a letter sent from a noble estate to a foreign governor. The letter promised access to key trade routes in exchange for military support. It was an attempt to invite foreign intervention and replace the Sultan with a puppet ruler. The betrayal was clear. The threat was real. And the Sultan understood that the stability of the kingdom now depended on confronting those who placed personal gain above national security before making any move. He summoned the leading nobles to the capital. He did not accuse anyone directly. Instead, he presented them with a simple message. Unity was essential for survival. And anyone who threatened the kingdom's stability, whether through alliances, manipulation, or negligence, would face consequences. He gave them a choice: support the reforms or step aside. Some accepted. Others hesitated. A few remained silent, their refusal hidden behind formal gestures. But the Sultan saw everything. He had learned to understand silence as clearly as speech. The following month, he traveled across the kingdom himself. He inspected military outposts. He met local governors. He walked through markets and villages. His presence sent a message: the Sultan was not a distant ruler. He was among his people. He listened to their complaints. He observed their struggles. And everywhere he went, he saw the same pattern: people respected him, but feared the nobles who controlled their daily lives. This journey shaped the next stage of his leadership. He realized that reform alone was not enough. The kingdom needed a new foundation, one built on fairness rather than inherited privilege. But such changes would reshape the entire political system, and any shift in power invites resistance from those who benefit from the old order. The Sultan knew he had to move carefully, while he focused on internal reforms. A new threat emerged beyond the borders. A rising general from the eastern territories had begun unifying scattered warbands. He preached a message of expansion and conquest, claiming that prosperous nations grew weak through comfort. His influence spread quickly, attracting young fighters eager for purpose. Reports described him as disciplined, intelligent, and ruthless, qualities the Sultan respected but did not trust. Intelligence officers warned that he planned to invade within a year. The Sultan understood the danger. Unlike previous enemies, this general was not driven by chaos or greed. He was guided by ideology, making him harder to negotiate with and more determined to fight. Preparing for this new conflict required more than military readiness. It required emotional unity among the people. It required loyalty that could not be purchased or forced. And above all, it required the kingdom to be at peace internally. The Sultan accelerated his reforms. He established new military academies in frontier regions, ensuring young commanders learned not only tactics, but ethics and discipline. He improved infrastructure, building roads, water systems, and storage centers to support long campaigns. He modernized the message system, placing trained riders at strategic points. These changes strengthened the kingdom's resilience. But while the Sultan prepared the nation, the noble faction grew more desperate. Their spies monitored his movements. Their agents spread false stories to undermine his reputation. Some even began stockpiling weapons, anticipating the moment they might challenge him openly. The Sultan knew the confrontation was inevitable, but he chose not to act in anger. Instead, he gathered evidence meticulously. When the time came, the truth would speak louder than force. As months passed, the Eastern general continued expanding his influence. His warbands became a structured army. His territory grew, and his speeches grew more aggressive. The Sultan assembled his council. He explained that the coming war would be unlike any they had faced. It would not be a simple battle for land. It would be a clash of ideas, one side seeking domination, the other defending stability. His council agreed unanimously. The kingdom would be ready. But before facing the external threat, the Sultan had to confront the internal one. One evening, under the dim lanterns of the palace hall, he summoned the nobles who opposed him. Their faces showed confidence, as if they expected negotiation or compromise. Instead, the Sultan revealed evidence of their secret meetings, forged alliances, and attempts to weaken the kingdom. Silence filled the room. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stated that leadership carries responsibility. Those who violate that responsibility lose the right to lead. Some nobles surrendered immediately. Others fled. A few resisted, but their influence collapsed quickly. Within weeks, the old power networks dissolved. The kingdom stood behind the Sultan with a unity not seen in generations. With internal stability secured, he turned his attention to the eastern frontier. Scouts reported that the general was gathering thousands of fighters near a mountain pass known as the Gate of Winds. The terrain was dangerous: narrow paths, steep cliffs, unpredictable weather. Most commanders advised avoiding confrontation. But the Sultan saw opportunity. Fighting in open plains would give the enemy advantage, but fighting in the mountains would equalize their strength. The Sultan traveled to the frontier himself. He inspected the ridges, analyzed the wind patterns, and studied the narrow stone paths. He planned a defensive strategy based on terrain rather than numbers. He sent messages to allied tribes, calling them to join. He positioned his best archers on high cliffs, and he ordered engineers to prepare obstacles that could block enemy movement. As the sun rose over the jagged peaks, the enemy army appeared. Their banners flowed in the wind. Their drums echoed through the valleys. Their general rode at the front, confident in his cause. But the warrior Sultan was ready. The first clash began with the whistle of arrows sweeping down from the cliffs. Rocks were released, blocking narrow passes. The enemy struggled to advance. The mountain terrain turned their strength into weakness. The battle lasted 3 days. The wind froze hands. Snow blurred vision. But the Sultan never retreated. He coordinated every movement, conserving strength, predicting the enemy's frustration, waiting for the precise moment when discipline would collapse. On the 3rd day, the enemy general attempted a risky maneuver, sending his best fighters up a steep ridge. It was a mistake. The Sultan anticipated.